Yeah, I'd like to open the Public Works Committee meeting for Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. And the first item on the agenda today is the open forum, where the opportunity for the public to bring up any item that's not on the agenda here. And seeing that there's no one here, we'll go on to the next one, which is the bike path considerations from Parks Master Plan.
All right, so just before the meeting, I gave each one of you a list of the roads that we're currently considering for the 2025 road bond. So a few of these, we believe that there are going to be opportunities to add bike paths, and some of them are outlined in the parks plan, and that's part of why I gave you the whole thing. When I know there's only about 3 pages in it that really pertain to bike trails largely, but I thought you might find it interesting if you didn't have a copy of this before to look at this. But in particular, two roads that I'm aware of that we would strongly want to consider a bike path are Church Street here. And even though the road isn't really being considered for a road project, Lakers Lane, connecting by the school all the way down to 18. I think we should look at that as part of this project too, at least consider it anyway, and that way it has been looked at. But the park plan also does kind of tell you what the park department's goals are for adding other bike paths throughout. The parks director, Amber Peterson, and myself have been talking about this some too, and I think this committee might render its opinion on what style of bike path we should add. I think probably most of you are familiar with the Paul Bunyan Trail, and you probably are also familiar with the new bike path that's being constructed and costs and trade-offs with that. And so we're considering a couple of other types. If you go through the roundabout headed toward Nisswa Lake, on your right-hand side, after you've crossed 371, you'll see one trail where the trail butts right up against the road. It's just a curb and then the trail. So that's one type of trail we would like to talk about as a possibility. Another way of doing it would be having a painted, just a painted trail on the road. So the road might be paved wider, allowing for a path on each side going each direction for a bike path there, or maybe just one where you can do both ways. I don't know what others' opinions are of it. One thing that we've identified that we're not real crazy about with the new trail is that little space of grass between the road and the trail. It's going to be an ongoing maintenance headache, I think, trying to get grass to grow in that, and it just doesn't really. I think we can do well to eliminate that. So I think what I'm going to do is unless probably at next month's meeting, I'm going to try to get some kind of a visual of each type of trail and try to get your opinion on what you think would work best. We would like to have maybe a bike standard, maybe where we have 2 different types of trail that we call out for. My thought is, for instance, on a heavier traffic street such as Lower Roy Lake Road or Upper Roy Lake Road and Church Street, maybe that's one where we have a trail that's separated by a curb, kind of like what I'm seeing on Colonel Thorpe. And in some of the cul-de-sacs or lower traffic roads, that's where maybe we just bring in the painted bike paths. And I guess what I would ask is if any of you think any of these other roads here, in your opinion, should be considered for a bike path, and if so, why, or why not? And I think we should just go through this and make a preliminary call of what we think makes sense to add or not add a bike path.
So this list right here, you have the road condition and repair surveys. So those are the only ones that you're considering at this point.
Right.
When we repair something, then to add that on,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
Obviously, building a bike path is an expensive operation, especially from scratch.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I don't think we could ever do everything all at once that we'd like to add. But I think if we could do, we thought as staff, the ones that have discussed it, if all we were able to do was the bike path from the school to 18 and then Church Street and you can complete the loop on Poplar, that would be a pretty good addition to our trail network to do in 2025. I don't, I'm hoping that maybe when we have an opportunity to have an open house along the way here, citizens will say, hey, I live on, I don't know, let's say East Roy Lake Road and I'd like the bike path. Hopefully we'll get some of that feedback or people that just say, I don't want a bike path. Either way, so we kind of know if what we're considering makes sense.
I don't think I'm familiar enough with each one of these streets as you go down the list to be able to give an answer, but could you start out by saying which ones you guys are thinking about
Sure.
to
So
begin with?
I'm just gonna go down the list in order quick and say what I think. So like Sumac Trail right now is a gravel road. So we're proposing that be paved in general. It's a short dead end road on the far south end of the city. Right now, we wouldn't be considering a trail for that. The two alleys, we're not considering trails for those at this point, because obviously the Paul Bunyan Trail runs right alongside of it. Church Street, yes, those we would, at least the south segment of that, I think we would be considering the bike path. Maybe in the north end, that might be a candidate for the painted type. The parking lots, obviously no need for a bike path there at this point, other than Amber did talk about connecting the parking lots to Paul Bunyan Trail or possibly if a trail is constructed on Church Street to bring that in. And I think she has a design for how she thinks that should work. And I'm going to see if I can get that from her. Maybe I'll share that with you so we can investigate that a little closer. City Hall Street, no immediate plan to put a bike path along there that I'm aware of. East Roy and Edna.
Oops, sorry about that.
East Roy, right now, we don't have a plan for that one, although that's a kind of a lower volume road. I think it might be a candidate for a painted trail if we were to consider one there. Same with Edna Lake Road. The biggest issue with Edna Lake Road at this point, and this is something that we brought up with MnDOT with their corridor survey, although they're not going that far north, so they're probably not going to consider it this time. We don't have a decent crossing for that road or Upper Roy Lake Road to come across 371. There's nothing really.
It's fun.
Right, yeah, it's not I wouldn't recommend, for an adult, let alone kids. So I think, we've put together an idea for a citywide trail system that we like, and I think Amber's gonna try to talk about that with her park committee before we get into that too serious here, trying to get an idea of what they would like to see and what they wouldn't. As staff, we had one idea, so, but I think we want to develop that plan. We talked to Joe about that a little bit, having that plan ahead of time. So that way, when MinDOT does come through that area with their, say, their corridor study for those bike plans have been existing for a while. So they're more likely to more strongly consider crossing for 371. Fire hall parking lot, probably not so much. Forest Avenue, that's in Grandview. Grandview has a lot of their own trails there. I don't think we're considering anything at this time. Hole in the Day Drive. We don't have anything planned as staff. I could see that having possibly,
That might be interesting. I believe that's with the new park there. That's along Lake Hubert area there.
Camp Lincoln.
Camp Lincoln, yeah.
Yeah, okay, this is on the other side of 371.
Okay.
So right now, I don't think we're considering that too much.
Mhm.
You can move north and south through the city on the Paul Bunyan if you can get to it. These might be candidates for a painted trail if we were to consider that type. Candor Court is a very low volume road over here off of Poplar. We're really not considering a trail at this point. That might be a candidate for a painted trail if there was to be one. Lindy, this is another gravel road currently, and it's in the same area as Sumac Trail. Same thing, really not considering a trail at this point. If it were to be paved, maybe we would put a painted trail there. Linden Boulevard, east and west. Those are gonna be difficult to add a bike path, especially on the west side. And the reason I say that is because you have buildings right up against the current pavement and it's fairly narrow. I think at best we could put a painted trail through there possibly, but I don't see how we would add a dedicated trail of any kind there, although there is a part of one on the west that Grandview maintains, but once you get past the Grandview property, there really is, I don't know if there is room for one. Nakoma, same thing, it's in Grandview. Grandview has some trails that they maintain in that area, so the city isn't really considering one for that. Old Government Trail. This is a very low volume road. I don't know that it would be a good candidate for a bike path at this time, maybe some point in the future. Park Avenue, this is the gravel road behind the fire hall. I think where that would play in is, once I get Amber's plan for how she would like to access the park with the bike path.
Mhm.
Wherever she wants to put that, I think that would serve the purpose for Park Avenue. I don't think it was right on Park Avenue from what I recall of that, so. Let's see, Parkway Drive, that one, trying to think where that's at. I'll come back to that one. Polk Road, this is near the old government trail. This is more on the south side of town. It's also an extremely low volume road. We're probably not considering a trail at this time, although if citizens were to come in and request it, I'd say a painted trail would probably make the most sense there. Roy Lane, a little bit more population here. This is off of Upper Roy Lake Road. Again, I would say probably a candidate for painted trail if we were to have one. Upper Roy Lake Road, I think we definitely want to consider something there. And because of the traffic and the length of the road, I think that one should be separated somehow, either a much wider shoulder or possibly one that's separated by a curb. Wooddale, Road South. That is, right here next to the school. And not a lot of traffic there. There's not a lot of houses on that one. So I don't think we're really considering that for a trail at this time. And plus it parallels Church Street pretty close. I don't know that we would have, a desire to place a trail there yet. And then Woodward is another road inside Grandview and has bike trail access through Grandview. So I think that would be what we're thinking with those so far.
So currently, we don't have any policy about a bike trail, right? As far as size or how we build it.
Not really, no. I mean, we just built the trail that you see on Hazelwood. And because we used a grant to build that, there were certain conditions we had to meet. That's why that separation is there that
Mhm.
we're not really fond of, but that was a requirement for that
Hmm.
grant.
Yeah, the separation on that is desirable 6 foot. And you go down to a 2 foot minimum.
Yeah.
But they won't let you connect it. Depending on what the funding is, and that goes with, if you do a city trail, it's different, but.
Right now, I personally like the trail where it's just separated by a curb. It gets it up and out of the way. The curb is a different color than the pavement, so there's a little bit of a notice that, hey, don't go over the curb or, I don't, I know, Joe, you expressed some reservation in that style of trail when we talked about it, but from a
It-
cost and effectiveness standpoint, I kind of like it and it's more compact. Cost to maintain it. I know to build it is probably not a huge difference, but to maintain it afterwards, the mowing and people are gonna park on it and they'll blow the black dirt and the grass out. So we'll be forever maintaining that. And so if we can get away from that style, I guess I don't recommend that in most places.
It's interesting, you look around the state at different communities, if you bike ride a lot especially, and see the different, methods that, it's almost like on a case by case basis where they put these things and how they put them in. Like when you're talking about a trail next to a public right of way, would that be on property that's on the public right of way that wouldn't have to buy from the property owner?
That would be our first choice. I
Yeah.
do think there's places where we would have to buy some additional right of way.
Mhm. And that would be one of the many considerations, I guess. But I guess the most important consideration would be safety.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, like I'm on County Road 13 and it's just a wider road with a line and people are riding on the bikes there. It's a lot better than it was before when it was narrower, but still, as you're driving down, you're always worried about people not paying attention and coming on over.
Wearing
And you
beer
can see they're nervous too as they're going on the bikes. So I don't like that idea. I'd rather have a curb as a minimum.
There's a lot of variables to it. I was driving along the new trail today. And it was a section of it where it's all complete and ready to be used. And here's a runner running on the road next to it. So even if we provide it, there's no guarantee that they'll use it. But I think it's a good option for the folks who do care. And gives them some place to be other than on the road.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere, maybe I've missed it in here, but is there an overlay of where existing bike trails are at and proposed ones?
No, it's a map that we have to create yet. I was kind of alluding to that a little bit ago. We're trying to come up with a citywide master bike
Mhm.
plan.
Yeah.
And so Amber and I have sketched out where we think it makes sense to add bike paths at this time. And that's something she wants to discuss with her committee, and I said I would let her committee go first because they're more in tune with what the bicycle community would like to see for trails. And once they've kind of laid out how they would like that to look, I think we can give our opinion too, where it makes sense to add them. I think the basic idea is to try to give people as many east-west crossings as we can, and then make sure that there's a way to move from the far south end of the city to the far north end
Mhm.
on a bike.
So with this survey that you just gave us, Tom, is this just for more for information at this point?
Really,
Should we
it's,
go out and look at all these and come back with some feedback if we have any?
oh, absolutely, yeah, I would love to hear, especially if you're somebody who does bike.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you are, but if you do pedal bike frequently, or even a little bit, it'd be nice to hear what you think. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, this gives you a good idea of where we're gonna be focusing, and there are a few opportunities to do something. Like I said, as staff, we felt if we can add the trail from the school down to 18 and do a loop along Church Street and bring it back on Poplar, maybe we add one up on Upper Roy. We've done a lot for one bond cycle, so.
When do you expect that master plan with Amber and coming up here?
I'm not sure. I'm guessing that's something they'll be talking about between now and probably.
Okay. So I guess what we can do right now is go ahead, if we have any opinions, drive it on a bike and see where we might want to put one, we can give that to you.
Mhm.
And then if you can come up with that, I think that'd be helpful, to see where it's located and everything.
Yeah,
And then we can come back to that later on. But for me, it's just as a minimum, just me personally, I'd like to see a curb at least.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Although there's a lot of communities now that have the painted paths, if you go into Brainerd, you will see them.
Also, there's over on off of 25 on the south side of Brainerd, south east side. There's a oh, I got it.
Up into.
Oh, I don't like. No, there's a sidewalk up against the curb. And then on the road, there's a painted line for the bike. So they got a sidewalk, not a trail or a pathway. And then they put the bikes on the road with painted.
Mhm.
So it keeps the pedestrians walking down the painted.
Mm.
But yeah, just another, like you said, there's so many options
Yep.
depending on what the.
I think at this point, one thing I would say about it is, yeah, the painted path probably isn't as safe, but even on a busy road like Upper Roy, just having that at least gives cars an awareness that there's people there on bikes and that they have to share the road. It can't hurt. And I think that's largely what you see with the paint markings that I've seen, like in Brainerd. It's a picture of a bicycle, and I think it gives a direction. The other nice thing with that is, if you see how people bicycle, a lot of them are on the wrong side of the road. They'll go like somebody walking. Well, a walker walks on the left side of the road against traffic. A bicycle is supposed to go with traffic like a car, and I think there's a whole generation of people that don't understand that. So.
Yeah, I remember on County Road 13, I did exactly that. I went against the flow of the traffic, driving my car because I wanted to see what was coming at me. The roads were too narrow. And even then, I can see some people are nervous on that. Even though it's painted, it's just painted white like any other line. So, they're just nervous. So having a curb would separate that better, I would, in my mind. Yeah.
Ultimately, yeah, I agree. That's a better.
Curbs. I'm not familiar.
Oh, so if you stepped off the sidewalk here in front of the building, so it's just, you can have that regular curb. There are a couple of different other kinds we could have. There's a lower profile.
No, they're getting a curb.
Right,
It's not just like some little round.
no, I mean, there are surmountable curbs. Like you would have on the roundabout, that concrete that's in the center, that's a surmountable curb, if you will.
Depending on the speed too, would be the height of the curve. So if you're on your 30-mile-an-hour roads and they're B618 is normal or surmountable. And then when the 50-mile-an-hour, you're gonna have curb on that, it's gonna be 4 inch because that takes out or helps not flip the car at the high speed to hit a curb like that.
When you do have a trail that's separated by that 6 feet, 4 feet, 2 feet, whatever it is, you were talking about the difficulty in maintaining that. What if instead of maintaining it in grass, you just plant wildflower seed?
Same thing, you're gonna have people running it down and just destroying the vegetation. If you look at just about any one of our streets, the grass within the first few feet is scrub grass at best. One, we can't water it, obviously, it's too much, and mowing it, we mow it twice a year. I'm not saying we couldn't do that, I think it would be better for us if we could have it the other way, because then there's nothing to mow and nothing to fill with dirt. The other thing then becomes, how much right of way do you need? And this is something I'm not sure, maybe Joe, you'd have a little insight on that, but I don't know that we would need as much right of way if we could bump it tight up against the existing pavement.
No, you definitely get more. Yes, you definitely get more if you can bring it up to the pavement. What I was thinking too is for me, if you do it up against the back of the curb, possibly make it, 1 foot wider and paint that so that people see that, they're not with their tricycle running right up on the edge of the curb.
I hate to have them
At least
go
they
over that
see
curb and
something
fall
that
into the
tells them
road.
to move over. Yeah. 30, in the city, right, that I don't think that's as big of a concern with, having it right up against the curb. If you put it on the road and you paint it too, then if you don't have parking a lot of your roads, so it doesn't matter, but that would take out the parking part of it, because you'd have a lane there for bicycles and stuff, so. There's things to consider, depending on how wide it is. I know that we've been talking about, backage roads, those would be too good north-south, that well, at least halfway on one side and possibly go the rest of the way on, when the airport property, if that ever developed, go down there, that extended, but
Yeah, because then that would connect with the hole in the day road there, wouldn't it?
it's a long connection.
Let's see,
North end of hole in the day, I think goes all the way up to where that airport truck.
right, if we put a back road on that side and.
That's what I'm wondering is, should that be one of the ones that's considered if we are considering?
So the thing to know with the back, it's roads, if they get built, they're probably going to involve state funding. And so then they're subject to MinDOT's complete streets requirements. And part of complete streets is our bike paths. So
Okay, is there anyone else that wants to say anything about this? Otherwise, I'd like to go on to the next item. And maybe what we could do is, next time, if you get that,
I think what I
Master
could
plan.
do, Mark, is
Uh-huh.
if we haven't gotten anything from the parks yet, just what we've talked about so far and what already exists. Maybe I could get either Joe to do it or I could try to do it. Put together just a map we can reference that shows those things.
right,
So we have something as a basis for future discussions until we get something from parks saying what they want.
that would be great if you could do that.
Yeah, I think that would work.
I think that'll help us a lot. Okay, then, if there's nothing else, I'd like to go ahead then with the next item, which is the neighborhood road assessment policy.
Right. So currently, the city of Nisswa, our road assessment policy is largely, we don't use one. We don't use an assessment. We use funds from our levy for almost all road projects. The only time we would try to levy is if we had, say, an existing private road that wanted to come in that one would be a 100% assessment if we did it. We don't have a clear policy on that really either. As far as bringing private roads in, how we would fund that. I know Jenny and I have had a few discussions of how that might look, how we might do that. There have been a few inquiries over the years of folks wanting to get their private road brought into the city for maintenance. And so right now what we do is we say, if you're willing to pay the cost as a neighborhood to bring it up to the city road standard, paved, ready to go, we would consider it for that, but it's fully at the cost of those citizens who abut the road.
Now, currently, we have no assessments for roads or anything like that.
Non-existing city maintained streets.
Right.
We don't unless they ask for, we did give ourselves a little bit of a wiggle room on that. We said that if they had special requirements such as when we did Main Street. Some of the folks wanted bump outs, bigger sidewalks. Decorative street lighting.
Hmm.
In those cases, that's not an ordinary repair of the road. And so we would try to assess those amenities back to the property owners that are requesting that.
Have we actually done that before?
We have not assessed anyone in the 17 years I've been here.
Okay. Yeah,
And so the other documents that I gave you, just for consideration, I just wanted you to see examples of it. We had talked about this last month. So I gave you a copy of Cross Lakes Road Assessment Policy, Pequot Lakes Road Assessment Policy, Baxter's Road Assessment Policy, and Brainerd's policy. I didn't study these enough myself to comment on them a whole lot, other than to say, I'd say most cities have a much more aggressive assessment policy than Nisswa does. And I don't know if any of you had a chance to read through these at all, if you have any comments about them, but I think we hit this, if you do get time to review these, it will give you a good idea of where our road assessment policy could go if you wanted to have one. Anytime you mention the word assessments, it's like showing Dracula the cross or something. It's terrible, most people don't like the idea of an assessment, but it is an effective way for a city to fund their road projects, and there's a variety of ways to do it, and these are 4 examples of that. So I really don't have a lot more comment for that, other than to say what I was trying to accomplish by broaching the assessment topic was, one, we needed an avenue for more detailed avenue for adding private roads that want to come in, giving them an avenue, a way to more clear way to come into the city if they were desired that. And then when you look at this list of roads that we're considering, some of the other things we need to do, like the bike path, we know there may be a roundabout for City Hall Street. This road bond could be pretty large, and so we might be asking a lot of our general fund levy to finance this bond that we're considering. So I wanted you to at least look at assessments, and once we get a good estimate of what it's going to take to build these roads, I want to find out if you still want to consider an updated assessment policy, or if you want to continue going as we have, funding the road through the levy. I think Jenny has some information she's going to share here in a minute regarding some of the money that's coming back to us from the state. That may offset some of the need that we're going to have with this bond. So maybe it's still not necessary for us to do an assessment, but I do think it'd be wise for us, because this is a conversation we have about every 7 years when we do one of these bonds. I think it makes sense for us to at least visit the idea and either yay or nay, we recommend a change to the assessment policy.
so we have, what you're showing us here is that Cross Lake, Pequot Lakes, and Brainerd all have assessment policies here.
Mhm.
And why have we not, historically, why haven't we had any assessment policies?
It just has not been a
A pol-
politically accepted avenue
Okay.
for funding the roads, and we haven't had a large enough hit, I guess you would say, through one of these bonds. And not that we're trying to make them big enough to where it hurts somebody, hurts, that's not our intention at all. We're trying to maintain, if you remember last month, we talked about a road cycle. So we're trying to run all the roads through a cycle of repairs. Well, each time we go through this cycle, we're adding things with, we're looking at bike paths, other amenities such as a roundabout. So these bonds are starting to grow a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And we may not be able to fund this through a levy increase. I mean, Mark, you're working with this right now, how much the levy increase could be for 2024.
Mhm.
Well, if you were to throw on top of that, a large bond payment, that could, that could really be a big impact. I don't know, I won't say what percentage I think that might be, but it'd be significant. And if that came at an inopportune time where maybe there was a recession or something, now you're stuck with a hard choice. Do you fix the roads and live with the much higher levy, or do you drive on roads that are full of potholes and falling apart and
So
low driver satisfaction?
Tom, is this, or Mr. Chairman, is this just part of, this cycle of, having these discussions every several years, or is there some appetite for looking at this seriously as the city council?
None of the
Giving you
council
some
members have asked me
direction?
about an assessment at this point. This is really just the staff doing our due diligence
Okay.
to say we're aware this road bond has potential to be quite a bit larger than the one before it. And knowing that it may be a big pill for the levy to swallow, should we look at road assessments? Here's our existing policy. Here's some neighboring policies. What would you like as
Right.
citizens of the community in Nisswa? How would you like us to proceed forward? So I would say probably there isn't a huge, probably almost no appetite for an
Mhm.
assessment, but there may be a necessity.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember what year, but I recall the city of Baxter. And they even mentioned it in their frequently asked questions. They had come up to a point where their roads were getting old and they had to do something with them, and they looked at the cost. Previous to that, they had not had an assessment policy, but then I guess when they hit that juncture saying, yeah, I think we're gonna have to do this.
So far, if I remember right, in our last bond, we didn't have to do, we didn't have to purchase a lot of right of way to do the work we did. Mostly it was just a resurfacing project. Well, some of these, there may be some right of way, especially if you're talking about bike paths, and that will help swell the size of the bond too. So I think it's something we have to be aware of. If the backage roads are built, for instance, now a lot of that cost that the city realizes would be passed on to the developers along those roads, but the city will have some right of way costs there, engineering and some other costs that may not be picked up by the state.
Right.
So.
Now, if we were to move forward with an assessment cost, for the roads that we're thinking about putting a bike trail on, would the assessment be higher for people that are living on those roads with the bike trails? Because it'd be a higher cost per foot
Potentially,
than just, okay.
it depends on how you want to lay out the assessment policy.
Right.
But one thing you will notice if you read through there, some communities do it by the lot, so each lot has an equal share, or they do it by frontage foot.
So what would you want from the committee at this point, Tom?
I think really all I want is you to be aware of the assessment policies, and once we get an estimate, I'll be working with Joe to get a preliminary estimate on what we think these roads will cost to build. with the bike pass that we're considering. Those will be options. So we'll probably have say 2 or 3 different potential costs for this whole bond. And so you will look at those and probably prioritize what you think makes the most sense. And then we will look at, well, okay, this is the impact it would have on the levy without an assessment change. And then we can probably look at 1 or 2 different models for an assessment policy and see how that would impact the costs. So I think it's a discussion for later on, but I wanted you to have the background information to begin studying that and know why we're looking at it. So.
Yeah, just to take in, make sure you take into consideration the timing of this. I'm sure Jenny knows, you just don't pass it and it's, in place 2 weeks from now. I'm not sure what it takes. The public hearing process and all that, but okay.
Right, I realize it's probably longer than we would like, but this is where the conversation starts, and some of this stuff, it's there's, a lot of strong feelings on this one way or another, so I'm trying to make sure I have as much detail into the information I present you before I say choose this or choose that or recommend this or recommend that. And I'm not ready to ask you to recommend anything at this point.
When would you like to bring this up and talk about it after we've had a chance to study all this a little more?
I think this is something I'm gonna have to discuss with Jenny and probably Joe and get some feel for how long it would, how long of a process would it take for us to make an assessment policy change? And then I'll have to consult with Joe how long a time period he needs to come up with cost estimates and what information he needs for a cost estimate. I think the earliest I'm gonna look at this is maybe November, but it could be as late as January or February.
No, it is all of. This would have to be approved at the city council if there was a road assessment, correct?
Yes,
Um,
we're just making a recommendation.
right. Are you putting any of this online where people can see what neighboring communities have done so they can kind of educate themselves too, or?
Yeah, so every project that every meeting that we have in here, our background documents are always part of that pack and it's available to anybody. We are planning to put a page on the website for the 2025 road bond where I can download this information to it, and so then it'd be more readily available to people to see. That's about all I have, unless one of you have a question or a comment, I guess.
Any other questions? Well, then I'd like to go ahead to the next item, which is the current road bond. Current road bond amounts and levy load discussion. So Jenny, if you could help us with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the committee. It's been a while since I've seen all of you, so I hope you've been enjoying summer and taking it easy. And I appreciate the committee's time on this process. There's a lot of variables that go into it. As you can see, it's not a simple yes or no, pick a road and moving forward. And so it takes a lot of time to go through and to kind of vet all the variables. The committee asked some great questions last month about funding and just financial information. And so I put together a packet of information for you to take with you. I'll go through everything at a high level, but certainly there's information you can refer back to later and we can keep handy as we go through this process some more. I think Tom is right that as we work through this, maybe setting up a timeline and a sequence for when we're going to work through each component of this. So we understand, everyone understands the schedule and when the public will be engaged, and getting their feedback is important as well. So, so just thank you about that. I noticed just about a minute ago, today's the 22nd. So I'm starting off really well with this information, but I was working on it yesterday. And so hence the 21st. Feel free to stop me as I go along. This is high level and sometimes it's difficult to figure out where to exactly start and stop with the information because you could just keep going and going, but hopefully it's a good framework for you and we can, we'll kick it off here. So some of the questions that were asked last month by the committee was just broadly speaking, what are the sources of income that the city has available to it? Certainly we have our general fund levy. So in theory, if there was a road that needed to be reconstructed and it was $1 million, we could just levy for that and proceed the following year and redo the road if we needed to do. Historically, we don't take that approach because the dollars involved are significant and we want to, implement a bond or some kind of process. But certainly if there were smaller road improvements, that's an avenue that is available to us for consideration as part of our annual operating budget. The next item or option we have is debt service bonding, and that happens through our general tax levy. So in a few slides, I'll show what that looks like a little bit more. We have two specific mechanisms through state statute that allow us to issue bonds for road reconstruction projects. One is our general obligation street reconstruction bonds. That is the bond we issued in 2018 through this avenue. And then there is a general obligation improvement bond. The difference between the two has to do with assessments or not assessments. Our financial advisors would work through us depending on the avenue we selected with that. Depending on the avenue as well, sometimes there can be the caveat of a referendum requirement. Which is important consideration. So with the street reconstruction bond that we issued in 2018, there was no referendum requirement. We just had to have some public hearings, include enough time in the process to allow public input, and that's how we then proceeded with that process. I would say generally 3 to 6 months is the window of time that it takes to kind of go through all of that. So just to give you a frame of reference. High-level bonding, we'll talk more about the specific city bonds that we have in a couple of slides. Another source of income the city has is what is called the Small Cities Assistance Funding. This has been funding available to the city over the last 10 or so years, almost 10. But in 2023, the legislature did enact legislation that is now a dedicated funding source. So it is ongoing. The city will see money coming into it each year. There is a new delivery tax on Amazon purchases, I think, and some motor vehicle sales tax things that's going to start funding this consistently throughout going forward. And so 20 million was allotted in 2023. So we will have $87,912 available to us for road improvement projects, and we will put that towards this funding that we will have probably in conjunction with debt service that we would issue some bonds. But that amount is just under 90,000. I anticipate that will actually grow a nice amount in the next couple of years. We should see that over $100,000, according to what I've been hearing about that once that revenue starts to come in a little bit more. But it is funding for cities under 5,000 population. I know the committee was discussing this last month. There is large cities assistance funding available as well. And just some historical information for you on that. As we continue on, so local government aid, LGA, as we refer to it as, we do not receive any LGA. We are fortunate to have a very strong tax base, but on the flip side of that, then it disqualifies us from just about any other funding available. In 2022, our estimated market value citywide exceeded the $1 billion mark, which is significant. And just, I have this slide here. It's hard to describe. I couldn't even describe all of the different layers to how the LGA calculation is done. It is reviewed approximately every 10 years after the decennial census occurs. There's usually an adjustment to the LGA formula for cities and counties. So this is from the League of Minnesota Cities website, basically just stating that it's a complex formula and there are a lot of variables that go into it. For reference, I thought it was interesting, the city's history on LGA funds. You can see it's pretty nominal at best. And so we have not received any LGA funding since 2008. There was a few years of funds available to us and then nothing since the late 80s. But just for your reference on local government aid. We just got through talking about assessments. Typically one of the pros to assessments is just offsetting the general taxpayer cost and the overall debt service burden to the city. I think part of the rationale historically has been that every resident lives on a road and therefore part of your taxes just goes to keeping that road up to a standard. But there are certainly a lot of complexities with every road has its own unique situation and cut those costs more or less, just depending on where they are. So more to come as we continue to talk about assessments, but that is certainly something to consider as we move through this process. And then local option sales tax. There was some conversation last month about that. And so I can speak to that broadly. The current requirement or one of has been an important component to the legislature has been this idea of regional significance. And so I think over the past couple of years, you've seen a lot of sales tax approvals for things like civic centers or airport improvements or libraries or things like that. Road improvements have not always risen to the top as far as kind of deemed importance from a legislative perspective. So that would be a hurdle, if you will, in getting a request through as far as if we were to use it for road improvements. I have asked the Department of Revenue over the last couple of years if they can provide an estimate of what sales tax would generate, at which a 0.5% sales tax would generate approximately $400,000 to the city, which is a nice amount, certainly. But yes, as Councilmember Utzinger mentioned last month, there is a current moratorium on local sales tax requests. And as part of the approval for the cities that came to the legislature over the past 2 years, they were all approved. About 30 of them were approved in May before the end of the session, with the caveat that the moratorium be put in place and that a task force be created that will analyze and do some digging on what if the current statute language is still appropriate. It's been about 20 years since it's been looked at. And if not, if there's any modifications or adjustment, this task force will be making that recommendation to the legislature. So the report is due next January. So a relatively short timeframe. It consists of 7 individuals. The Commissioner of Revenue is the chair of the committee, and I am actually on the committee. And so I will be a part of those conversations and can certainly report back information that would be relevant. So I think that will be great for us to sort of know, have some information about how that's working out. But that's a new wrinkle. We were talking about a sales tax, and then this kind of changed the timeframe for us, but we will keep working on it and see where that goes. As far as the city's levy, so here is a snapshot of the specific line items for the 2022 pay 2023 levy. This is our general fund only, so no enterprise funds. The top line you'll see our general property tax levy amount, and then the next 3 lines reflect 3 of our 4 bonds that we levy separately. There's actually the way that our 4th bond was certified to the county, we have to keep it separate, but we technically have 4 general obligation bonds. And so the question came last month about what percentage was our street bond with respect to the rest of our debt service. And so at the very bottom, you'll see the 2018 street bond is reflects 44% of our total debt service to the city currently. I provided a summary of our payoff schedule and just a little description on each of our outstanding bonds that we have. You will notice that in the third column, our term date for the bottom three we have a final payment coming up in 2024. We have one coming up in 25 and one in 26. So we have some debt service rolling off of our schedules upcoming in the next couple of years. And the idea was to try to keep our debt service as level as possible, so we don't see these major spikes and valleys with that as it impacts our levy. But this is just some information for you overall for what we issue debt service for, and the time of when the debt's rolling off, I think, is important. Just a couple slides. I thought maybe you'd be interested in some of this sort of broader information with respect to the city. So the breakdown of the city's general fund revenues, you can see 85% comes from our property taxes. We have some fees for services that the city generates each year, which is about 8%. And that's things like zoning permits, liquor license fees, cemetery fees, just some things like that. So that generates about 8% of revenue for us. And then we do receive a transfer from our liquor fund. So from the pickle and spirits, they transfer funds into the general fund to help offset the levy. For 2023, that was $265,000. With respect to market value, you will see that the city's residential category for that is over 50%. And our seasonal is 38%. So we're at 90%, over 90% of our valuations attributable to our residential and our seasonal properties. It's very interesting that our commercial valuation is only 8%. And so when you think of kind of our thriving, I think commercial retail businesses in the city doesn't translate to be able to maybe tax that area, category more than the residential, even though the tourism economy is really strong. We're having a lot of visitors to our community, and there is, more impact to our infrastructure as a result. But really the burden is felt by the residential and the seasonal properties in our community based on the breakdown. The last slide I have for you is just a look back on our market values. They have steadily increased over the last 5 years. They will continue to do so. In 2022, we saw a significant increase in our valuation, up over 30%. And there we go on the bottom. For the 2023 values that we use as a part of our 2024 levy work that we're doing now, our valuations will have increased about 10% from 2022. So we continue to see an increase in the valuations consistently over the last 5-6 years. I think that definitely plays a role in how the council looks at setting the levy, trying to keep that consistent and growing proportionately with the growth in our tax base as well. So that's a lot of information. I don't know if it was helpful or if it's just at least something that you have available to you as we work towards trying to kind of figure out each step of the way with the road bond conversation. But I tried to go back and look at or hear the questions from the committee last month and provide some information relative to that. And with that, I'll answer any questions, or hopefully that was somewhat helpful for the group.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I did have a question. As far as the street reconstruction bond, the capital improvement plan bond, and the street reconstruction bond of 2018. So basically we just keep paying that off every month. We're servicing that debt, right?
We have 2 payments a year.
Okay,
And so typically one is just an interest payment, and then one is a principal and interest payment. So for all of our bonds, we have two semi-annual
payments a year.
payments. Yes,
okay.
yes.
And that payment itself, As far as, say, like if the levy turns out to be 10%, for example, how much of that, what percentage is that then of this, that of the payments that we're making of that levy?
Well, of the,
Yeah, I see,
someone's better at mental math than I am. I think we would just have to look at the proportion of the total levy. So, the 2.5 million on the total of 3 million, and then the difference is going to be our debt service.
and that's just the difference there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said something about, were you on a committee for this, these local option sales tax?
Yes.
What, I mean, I know you can't say, but looking in a crystal ball, but you look at a city like Nisswa, and you alluded to it, where you have a large seasonal, you're a hub, you're a regional hub for seasonal people year round. But you have a small property base against which to, collect. Looking at it, practically, it would seem that a local option sales tax would be, a good resolution to that. What do you think the appetite's going to be going forward for the legislature to see those kind of situations and to allow these kind of requests to be considered?
That's a great question. We've had our first introductory meeting as a group, just to sort of set some, norms on how we're going to work through the work ahead of us. I think a goal of everyone is to provide some clarity on what qualifies, what can we agree on that might be appropriate uses for requesting a sales tax. So we kind of take the guesswork out of that on the front end and say, if we can create these parameters that a city has the opportunity to say, I meet this criteria, and still, go to the voters and get that local approval and everything. But I think that's, for me, that's the goal, is to hear, what's the avenue that we can pursue and the things that would be appropriate for that. But you're right. I mean, every city is different and unique, and it's difficult to look at Nisswa and say, well, we're an affluent community based on our tax base. But it's disproportionate, I think, to the number of visitors and tourists that come to visit us. And we love that. And that's a part of our community. But then the impact to our residents, because we are under 2,000 population, and there's just a big discrepancy there. And so how do you account for some of those unique factors?
Now, Jenny, with these local option sales tax, would those be a permanent addition, or are those time limited?
They are usually time limited, and the legislature wants to see very specific dollar amounts and estimated number of years in which that money would be received, and kind of termination dates. Not that you can't renew, there's a process for that, but they want to know kind of purpose, and not just like ongoing funding for that purposes. They took a different approach with counties. They authorized counties to have basically the ability to establish a local sales tax specifically for transportation. So basically road improvements. And I believe 53 or so of the 87 counties have utilized that option, which has been great. I think that's a great specific area to allow. So they haven't branched farther for cities to do something similar at this point.
Can we piggyback on the county by adding our road construction one like that? No, they won't let us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, looking at your last page in here for the Nisswa market value info, there's been a pretty large increase over the last 3 years. What would happen in the event that housing prices go down? How would that affect our operating fund?
Well, in theory, if, let's say, property values go up 5%, and if the levy goes up 5%, everything remains equal, and the tax burden on individuals is the same. So if valuations go down and we still have to maintain a tax burden or even say adjust for cost of living or things like that, then there is a larger burden on the taxpayer because the levy has to grow.
Does that mean that the percentage tax on local property tax will increase in order to meet that burden?
In theory, yes. I mean, that depends on different variables as well, depending on your property tax burden could increase or decrease depending on your own valuation specific, relative to others. But yes, broadly speaking, yes, if valuations were to go down and then the levy goes up significantly, then taxpayers have to account for that increase. Well, if there are certainly questions in the future, I'll be working with Tom throughout this process. Just let him know if you have questions. We'll get you the information and we'll keep going through it. So thank you for your time.
And thank you, Jenny. Okay, well then I'd like to head on to the final item here, which is the recycling project's future.
All right, the first two things I have for you, last month we talked about trying to get notice to people using the drop-off site that it potentially can close. And so I've given you a sign, a possible sign that we could use that I would post out at the site, informing people that are using it that it will close. And basically I just say the drop-off site will either close or relocate soon. The Nisswa City Council will make a determination at their, and I don't know what meeting they're gonna make this at yet, but I'll fill that in before I make the sign. Meeting if the drop-off location will be rebuilt at a new site near the wastewater sewer ponds on Lower Roy Lake Road, or they will close the site for good. And then I direct people to the city's website for updates on this process, along with the dates and times of the meetings that will determine what the future is for the drop-off recycling site. And I give a phone number, which is my phone number. If they have questions or comments about the future of the drop-off site, I can go into it in more detail with anybody who's interested. So this first sign, is there anything I'm missing that you'd like to have?
This telephone number is where
So that telephone number is my direct line
your direct line, okay.
into my office.
Mm. Uh-huh. Scary.
Nobody else wants to answer those calls.
So where are we with the city council and everything on this, on the new site? It just seems like we've been discussing it for quite a while and it's
We have, so.
not really,
Well, the next sign that I'm gonna show you is informing people about the curbside recycling option. So they did pass that. So what we're trying to do is encourage as many people in the city of Nisswa to employ curbside recycling and reduce the volume at our drop-off site. I think there's just a hope among the council members, or at least some of them, excuse me, that curbside recycling will lower the volume enough to where they can strongly consider closing the site altogether. I think there's probably a split among the council. Some want to close the site now, and some want to consider moving the site to the new location. But they want to see the effect of the curbside recycling first before they make a call on that. So right now, there are 3 haulers that are either doing curbside recycling already or are about to provide the service. And so it's currently available, but the council said any hauler after, I believe it's May 1st, 2024, operating in the city of Nisswa must offer curbside recycling to their customers if they want it.
isn't that state law? Isn't that state law anyway?
Curbside recycling?
If they're gonna offer waste pickup, then they have to offer recycling as well?
They can increase the price if
Is
they're,
it?
they don't have to offer the recycling, but if they offer it, they cannot.
They
increase the
cannot
price.
increase it. So the local government can say, if you're gonna pick up trash, you're also gonna pick up recycling.
Mhm,
Okay.
That's what we're doing as of.
right.
And I know that from the beginning, we were talking about having curbside recycling in order to see how much, if it could bring down the amount of recycling done at the drop-off site now.
Mhm.
And then hopefully we could keep it there for a while, was the original thought, I think, what we were talking about here. But the recycling center has, I mean, now we have approved from the council, city council, the recycling, curbside recycling. So that is going to happen, just like what Tom said. And then the other main item was that we will be shutting down the current location. There's really, yes, it will be shut down. But the question is when. And mainly want to get that curbside recycling started first. And currently the county still pays for half of that recycling up until the end of this year. After that, we have no guarantee, right? Or is it 2024?
2024,
Okay,
the county has said that they will provide half the operational costs
right,
of the current recycling site.
correct. And so they will pay for half of that. And the curbside recycling starts May 1st, right?
That's when it officially starts, although, like I said, at least two, and I think a third of the main haulers in our community are offering the curbside recycling now.
Anyway, right now.
And I
But
know,
before this shuts down, we're gonna give it a chance to see how much it will take. I know it's gonna shut down eventually. But it's still gonna be there until we see how much the curbside will take off of that.
Right,
correct?
it will be there until we can see hopefully we'll be able to get some good data on that too.
Yeah.
But the other question is that, and from 2025, we have no guarantees whatsoever from the county. And it sounds like just sort of, well, I really probably shouldn't say, but it doesn't sound very good that we'll get any type of help at all, because they want to move it to their main site for Crow Wing County.
Mhm.
So with that, then we would have the full burden no matter what. And so then the idea is that it would just shut down at that current location, or we would take it to the other location that we discussed. However, with that survey that we did, it was very adamant that they did not want to have it there. So on the council too, there was a lot of that discussion, and so that we may not just eliminate it altogether and then see what happens.
Joe, I think this is a question for you. If we were to move to the alternative site, or the second site, how long would it take to get that up and going? How long would that construction process take?
Obviously, month and a half. Okay. We do it as a project, it's always short order. Some concrete, some grading, some concrete work. From there.
Well, I guess I'm not aware of the alternative site. Where was that?
I'm sorry?
The alternative site, where was that at?
Oh, that's at the wastewater treatment area?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That site.
Okay, that's the, okay, yep. I thought there was
That was
another
the one
one
I
on
was talking
top
about.
of that. Okay.
No, there's just no other
Yeah.
option really after exploring various properties. You know, you have to purchase that as well as to develop it. This is already land that the city owns, so it'd be the cheapest option to put it together. But even then, we're looking at a fair amount of money, and that would add a fair amount to the levy as well.
Right, so I think low end. Cause I think we're discussing this now in terms of we won't probably be offering a shooting range for the police, and we're probably not gonna have nearly the capacity for impound car storage. But even without that, it's still a pretty large area to fence in. I think you should expect at least a $300,000 cost to build that site. And maybe it's more, I don't know. We would need to get an updated cost when we're getting ready to build that. But just, so I, just as an exercise, a couple weeks ago, I used that $300,000 amount. And I said, okay, if the county pulls all their funding away, if we charged a per trip fee through the gate of $5 to each person going through there. And I took a guess that maybe we have 100 people a day dropping off stuff at this current site. At best, we would match the half of the operating cost that we have for this existing site. That wouldn't give us any money for construction. It wouldn't give us any money for the other half of the operation cost. So this is the considerations that I was mentioning. There may be other ways to fund that, but just use your own personal experience. If it costs you $5 to go through that gate with each pickup load or bag of material you have, how many people would be willing to pay more than that? I would say probably not many. And so you need the volume of people going through, but you also need to make enough money to make it pay. I just don't think the site will ever generate enough revenue to support itself. So the council will have to ask itself, is there philosophy that recycling is required? Is it a environmentally responsible thing to do? Is it something that they feel must continue even if it operates as a burden on the levy?
I think one thing to take a look at too is if you have 100 people going behind the fire station where it's at now, that's more central to people that are in the area. And that was one of the draws for a lot of people in keeping it where it's at. How many people are not going to go because of where the new location would be? It'd be more inconvenient. Two, if they're going to get charged, how many of them are going to go less frequently and bring in larger amounts?
This is all true.
If I'm going to get charged $5 instead of bringing in one box full of recycled stuff, I'm going to bring in a whole pickup truck load.
So we talked about it even in terms of it's not included in this site, but we also have a brush drop off at that site now. And we don't charge anything for that, but we think that in time, especially if the site is fenced in, that we should probably have a minimum charge like that. It's a convenience for most people. For $5 to get rid of a pickup load of brush or whatever, that's probably pretty reasonable. So you'll gain a little bit there, but yes, you'll lose a few for the reasons that you just said. What I'm getting at it with that discussion is just, I don't think we're gonna, through the usual means, we won't be able to generate enough money to pay to build and operate a site moving forward.
Okay. Mr. Chair. Tom, is it reasonable to expect that the city council would put in their half to keep that site open through 24?
So right now, the county has indicated that they're going to give us their half to continue to operate the
Right.
site.
So
through
will the
24.
city match that? And I mean, even if we're heading away from that.
Mhm.
Okay, everybody understands that. But in order to see what kind of impact there's going to be when we get curbside recycling, it's going to take, a few months to, go through that. So wouldn't it make sense to keep that recycling open for that, April or May through the end of the year and get a few months of experience to see, okay, this is what we have to work with.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will stay open until that time.
Okay, so
We'll
you're pretty
match it,
sure
I'm
that the
sure.
city council
In
will
my
match the
opinion.
counties
Yeah,
and say it's gonna be open at least.
at least until that, the end of the December, until that time. But after that, we don't know, if they'll continue or not. But I don't see that changing at this point. And this is just me personally. I'm not speaking.
Yeah, I
for the
know.
whole
When
council.
would we know that? So that, I think that's important information to be,
What
given the public.
I think should happen with this is May 1st, we're gonna have the curbside recycling has to start.
Mhm.
If we go through the summer of 24, that'll give us enough data, I think, to show, is this something we need to maintain or not?
Those would be kind of the peak times of the year,
Mhm.
right? Most
And-
impact on that recycling site.
And then I think by September or October of 24, I think the council would have enough information to make a determination if they want to continue
Yeah.
in the new location.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then during the months of September through December that year, we would start readying plans to either A, move out to the new site, or B, close
Be
down this site.
transitioning somewhere
Or transitioning nowhere,
or nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transitioning to something new
right?
Mhm,
or different.
mhm.
So I think the main thing is that we get this out to the public, that they know that this is coming up. And that what we're considering here.
So other than the signs that I've presented you, I have another one too that explains a little bit how the curbside recycling should work.
Mhm.
Now, what I'm gonna rely on is each hauler will do this a little different. So I think it makes sense for people to contact the hauler that they're either already using. Or one, I will probably provide the numbers and add names for contacts of the haulers that I know are providing the service, but if they don't see their hauler on that list, they should contact their current hauler to find out if he's going to offer this service moving forward or not. And they'll explain to them how best to do curbside recycling. I know there was some interest in education, but I think it makes sense to come through the hauler themselves. They will determine the best location for them to access bins for everybody. Each one probably will do bins a little different, so I think that's the simplest and cheapest way for the city to provide education for how to do curbside recycling.
Good, I'm glad you said that, because when you said that, contact your hauler to see if they will offer the curbside recycling service. I don't have a hauler. So I wouldn't know who to, yeah, right, I wouldn't know who to contact, so if we put the haulers that are set up to do this in the city of Nisswa, who are willing to do so, put their name and number on there.
They may not be on the sign, but they would be on the website. Kind of run out of room on a single sign for putting that much information. So I think probably what makes more sense is I will direct people to the website and we'll try to maintain a list of the haulers that will provide.
I'd really like to try to put it on that sign, even if it takes another sign, because,
It would be a second page because you see, I've
yeah.
given you a sample of that and it's pretty full, so.
Some people don't know how to really to use the website all that well anyway.
Sure.
I know that there are a lot, many more people can do it, but there'll be a certain number of people who won't be able to.
That's why Tom put his number on there.
Yeah, right.
Just call him. Everybody can run a phone.
You know, there's an art to making signs for the public, I think. And one of the things is use as few words as possible
Right,
and use bullet points.
yeah.
People look at this, it's like, what?
If I saw this, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna take the time to sit and read.
Right?
the thing.
I tried
Right.
to, I tried to figure out a way to make.
I know,
it
how do you
shorter.
put that much information? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just is very difficult. I think that's why wherever I can, I'm trying to direct them to the website
Yeah.
or call me because it,
Closing soon, yeah, just put the city website.
Closing soon, call
Updates.
me at this number and I'll explain why.
maybe. That's why I gave you these
And
signs. If there's,
Hire it.
if
I-
you
I-
want
I-
a different
Intern.
format or.
I would
something.
think that you can massage this somehow to get it down and then add those numbers. Because if it's only 3 companies, 3 lines.
Yeah,
So curbside recycling, we got obviously so many seasonal people here. Is that something that they can call and get in May and be done in October?
Yes, I did it.
hopefully.
Okay,
Mhm.
so they don't have to.
It costs a little bit more that way, but yeah, I've done it. At least with the one I've been using in a different location.
All right, well then I will edit these, I guess, and bring them back next month.
Mhm.
If you do have suggestions that you didn't talk about tonight,
I think it's beautiful, Tom.
send it to me.
I like it.
If you've got an idea for how to make this, how to say what I said in less words, I'd welcome that. The wordsmith can do that.
Send the word copy.
So anyway, we've talked about signs. What, is there another way that you think it's, how can I say this? Is this enough? is this enough notice? Outside of these signs and then what's on the city's website, is there any other way that you feel we have to?
I think you
Notify
you
people.
have access to like the Echo and,
Echo, yeah.
and the Brainerd Dispatch. I think more people read the Brainerd Dispatch than they do the
Ask
Echo.
Nancy to do an article
And
on
yeah, those are public service.
it. Interview,
that-
you know, she'd come and interview you and
They'll
and
do.
you can, maybe if it's right in the paper and all the papers.
Sure. So question for you, Mark, as the lone council member. Do you believe I should run this through the council or before we do anything? I think that's probably makes sense, but
I think we should, yeah. Just so that they're on board, because there's going to be asked a lot of questions as well.
yeah,
And I think this is a courtesy to let them know what we're thinking
I
of
think
here.
the more you talk about it, the more, it gets out there.
Right, and
So-
plus it will be on the city council site.
agenda. I'll ask to have it put on the agenda for next month.
Thank you.
All right, so I think with that, we've explored all the issues that I can think of with recycling. Anybody else have anything? Before we move?
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well then let's go to any committee member concerns or questions. Anybody have anything? Do you have anything? Galen, Cam? Tom?
Mr. Cherry, what about this? You had looking for volunteers. to-
Oh, yes, thank you.
to
I'm
do
sorry.
a Short
I
survey.
missed that. So what we were looking to do there, I was talking a few minutes ago about how many people do we have visiting this site? Right now, we don't have any count that I'm aware of. I don't think the hauler keeps that kind of an accurate count. What I was looking for is anybody who might have time, even if it's just one day or a few hours, to just grab a lawn chair before the summer's really over, like sometime in September, probably, right? And just sit there, count the number of cars that are coming and going. And maybe we could come up with a short survey, 1 or 2 questions, or maybe 3 questions of, we talked about this a little bit last month.
Mhm.
And then if you could just walk up to people, maybe when it's not real busy, just ask, what is your opinion on moving it to a new site? And if we close it, what are you gonna do with your refuse at that point? And then I probably think the third question would be, are you a Nisswa taxpayer? Because right now we don't know, we have ideas, we think we know how many people are coming from communities around Nisswa to use the site. But it'd be really interesting to know, try to get some data that says what the percentage actually is. Because if it was, say, a really high percentage is from the area around here, and curbside recycling is handling the Nisswa taxpayers, why would the Nisswa taxpayers continue to fund a drop-off site?
Has anything like this been done before?
We did a little bit of a survey about a year ago, if you remember, but not quite that detailed. At that time, we were still leaving it open for maybe other ideas for a site. I don't know that I think we've made it pretty voluntary for people to say where they were coming from, but I think where this will be different is before we ask people to voluntarily go to our or go to our survey site and answer it. And so we were getting people who were very motivated to reply. And so I think we got a skewed result. I think in this case, we're going to be asking the people that are actually using it, just random. What do you think of these 3 questions? And we should get probably a little bit better survey result, I think.
You might get a different result based on the day that you take those questions.
Right, so what I was hoping to do is if I can get 1 or 2 of you to volunteer to do what I was just suggesting. And then I have an employee who's gonna be on light duty who can probably fill in too. If we can figure out a week where this makes the most sense for us to do that. It'd be something where we would, at least 3 days in a row, maybe try to count and ask those questions and see what kind of results we get. it's not real scientific and it's not, and it's, it's not an absolute. But I
It'd be
think
a
it gives a
random
good idea.
survey, right?
Yeah.
But it would give you more information than you have
Right,
now.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it'd be
I-
wonderful if we could have it like this year and then match it to next year after the curbside recycling starts. But I don't think we'll be able to do that. But it's a good idea. I mean, at least you get more information than we have now.
So with
what
that,
what would you be thinking, Tom, like for a volunteer, like for a 2-3 hour shift or something, certain time of the day, certain day of the week?
so I think, the middle of the day, either anywhere from 8 till say 7. So whoever could do this, you tell me those times you think would work best for you. And we would try to do, 3 days in a row, I think,
Mhm.
maybe up to 5 if I can get that out of the gentleman I can pay to sit there.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how he will feel about doing it that many days in a row either. It probably gets a little monotonous, but I think we can extrapolate a little bit on the numbers that we get. So, if we can get, say, a 4-hour block out of somebody counting cars, we could say, okay, this looks like how many people we're getting per day here. We might be off by a little bit, but it'd give us at least an idea. Is it 50 cars that are going through there? Is it 200 cars going through there? Right now, we don't know.
Yeah.
We can assume at night, there's probably not very many.
Thought about maybe setting up a camera
Yeah, Cam.
for like,
Well, there is a camera there, but
run it for 5 days.
Well, then you get the number, but you don't get the input from
That's true.
from the people. Yeah.
You could still go out, do a sporadic, have somebody sporadically go up and interview people too, instead of sitting there counting.
I guess that makes some sense. I would have to. So it's Waste Partners who's provided the camera. And I think I know we have access to that view. I don't know if it's. I suppose it would be good enough for us to count how many cars are coming and going.
I say that was the value we had it around the roundabout.
Yeah, yeah, you could speed up the speed too, so it'd take,
Well, I was actually able to find a mistake that the contractors made for him. So
Oh,
they buried a manhole and couldn't find it. So
Oh.
we went
So
back on the,
there really is a camera that they?
Yeah, there is
shoot
one.
on? Oh,
yeah. We had it there mostly to try to solve abuse cases of it, because
Yeah.
we were having people dump just some ungodly things.
Yeah. refrigerators and stuff, right?
How long does that data stay in there? Like for a week?
I'm not positive. I'll have to find out.
Be good. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing it myself either, just randomly interviewing, but
Maybe
I'm only
he-
available on Sundays and Mondays.
Well, maybe he, if it's possible, he might even have some data from this summer. I don't know how long he stores that information. I'd have to find out. But I think if we can count 1 week, it would give us a really good idea under normal conditions, this
Mhm.
is how many people we can expect to visit our site. And but then I think, I still would like to do the survey. So what questions would you, I mean, other than the 3 I kind of talked about a few minutes ago, is there anything you think would be really important? Just short survey. I really would like to keep it for like 5 questions or less. Quick, something that they can do in 5 minutes or less. We're not holding them much, but gives us, some really valuable insight to how
I
this
think,
is working.
one of the things is if this wasn't available, what would you do with your recycling? And then I think also that it's important to, are you from Nisswa or, from outside the community? I wouldn't ask that the first question, though. I think people would get defensive about that,
Mhm,
maybe at the end.
mhm.
But you want to know, okay, obviously they know that this, resource is here. If it wasn't here, what would you do? Are you gonna put it in the landfill? Are you gonna take it home if you're not a resident,
Or you can drive out to the airport and use the county site.
I mean, is it important to know how many times a week you use it? I don't know.
I think recycling needs to be convenient for most people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a diehard people that would take it back to Minneapolis or something, but for the most part, if it's not.
Most people would not. They would throw it in the trash can.
I'd be guilty of that, so.
Yeah.
You know, if it's not convenient for me, if it's something that I have to pay or really go out of my way. Would I throw my
You're gonna-
hands in the garbage,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Oh, I would.
It's, you gotta, yeah.
So just to review, we're gonna ask, first question is, if the site closes, where are you gonna take the recycling? And then next question was,
Well, if Nisswa, I think it'd be important to know if Nisswa opened a alternate recycling site, you know, generally, you don't have to tell them exactly, but say it's, 10 minutes away or whatever, would you use that?
okay, that's question 2. Then the last question is, are you a Nisswa?
Are you, yeah, I wouldn't say taxpayer, but are you from Nisswa? Or are you from outside the community?
Sure.
Are you a resident of this one?
Yeah, are you a resident of Nisswa or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, not the
Oh,
first.
by the way, are you resident?
Right.
Yeah, you got a little report going.
All right, well then we'll set that up as, I'll write a script, if you will, for that.
Well, and I think we should have
survey.
some cards made that has his number on them and we can give those. to him.
Just give us your business card, Tom. Just have his business card.
You know, you're gonna make the sign. Sheets, so you take one. Yeah.
I suppose there is, sure.
Numbers, a little tear off tag.
Mhm.
Contact Tom for more details.
Just like a realtor does. A realtor does that too. They have the sheets in there and you can set something like that up.
I'll,
Like in a realtor's box.
Mhm.
Take this
So, yeah,
information.
Yeah.
make it flat.
Like a realtor's box.
Put a QR code on there. Click on that QR code. Everybody has a phone. Just do that and all the information be right there.
Well, I think you run into the
Well, that's
same
a good
problem. If
idea.
people can't access the city's website, they're not gonna know what
There's
to do
not
with a
one
QR
person on
code.
this planet that does not have a smartphone. at this
I
point.
agree, but a
Guaranteed.
lot of them don't know how to use a QR code either. They don't know what it is.
I think I like the idea of the realtor box, and we can put the QR code on there for those who
Mhm.
can figure
Just
that
as a
out.
link.
Now, they're emptying the garbage, recycling, it, so I imagine most of them, so they have to go back. Go back, you know,
My 78-year-old mother knows how to use a QR code on a phone. Yeah. She can't run a
Even-
Remote.
Even I know how to use it.
Well, see, right there.
All right, well, so I guess the remaining question is, who wants to do the survey?
I can do it, but it'd be Sunday or Monday for me.
Okay,
That's all I have free.
I could help out too, depending on the day and time.
okay.
I'd
Well,
be
I think we
willing.
could, whatever time works for you, I mean, anytime in September, I think would be fair enough. I mean, because you're just getting a representative sample of, maybe you ask a dozen people
Mhm.
these 3 questions. And we'll come back then next month with those answers and it'll give us at least
Okay,
some idea.
Do we need some kind of permission to do that from the city council to allow us to do that?
I don't think
just
so.
asking.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a public space and I don't know, for liability too, for the individual.
I suppose we can give you like a yellow safety vest so you look like
Yeah.
Stand by the dumpsters. Don't stop.
City of Nisswa hat, right?
maybe.
with Tom's number.
Yeah, make it look official.
I think I can probably.
Probably be better if we put a cell phone number on it, in case he's out of the office.
I'll follow up with an email to you guys. and try to get the date that you're willing to do it and
Your voice.
with the question. Job security,
Yeah.
answering phone calls.
You might not get done with anything else.
And I'll be out of pocket till beginning of September anyway.
Say that again.
I'll be gone until the beginning of September anyway.
Sure,
So-
okay. I don't think it matters what week, and I can probably have Mike do a few days too, and it, and we'll see how it goes. Even if it's not real scientific, it'll give us some, I think some insight into how that is working.
Yeah, maybe just set up a schedule and people can kind of sign up for their
Yeah.
their hours.
Sure.
That way you're not trying to adjust and call in everybody to see if this will work for that person or that person.
Like maybe the second week of September, because it'd still be warm enough to sit out there in a lawn chair
Mhm.
and.
You'll be out there too, Joe.
I'm picturing somebody with a lawn chair. Back row.
They do at the boat landings.
Right?
Okay,
All right, well, thank you, guys.
thank
Hopefully
you.
that's worth something for us to do that.
So any more concerns or questions? Anyone else have one? I'd like to entertain to close this.
So move.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Second.
It's carried. We'll see you later then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.